All right. Perfect. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At least afternoon at time of this recording. This is Nicholas Salter with the Keep It Real podcast. And I have my first virtual guest here. Her name is Brenna. Today, the focus of the episode is going to be more focused on talking about how to kind of recreate your value structure when you feel like you don't really have a place to start from. Basically, I know there's a lot of growing cynicism and nihilism going on now in America and across the world. The fall of religion, fall of God, as people would refer it to, leads to a lot of people not really knowing what direction to take with their lives, kind of being aimless, kind of going into more hedonism or going into kind of very dark paths. So I'm trying to help identify and help see, how people kind of help rebuild their value structure, even like without maybe much of a religious foundation, or just kind of restart there from, and just kind of see what conclusions can we come to. Just kind of have a dialogue and other random shit that comes across to my mind, which will probably will over the course of this conversation. But Brenna, love to have you on. Thank you for agreeing to be on with my crazy ass. I appreciate it, and it means a lot. Would you have anything else you want to, before we go into the questions, anything you want to bring up about yourself or,
I guess just to start off with, as you mentioned, I'm Brenna. I've gone through religious deconstruction from a high demand religion or cult. Some would refer to it as a cult. You have to be careful when using that phrasing, but that definitely destroyed kind of my moral center, or at least my center of the universe. But realizing that through that deconstruction, I did have deep set morals there. That it's not all dark. Past deconstruction, you don't necessarily need an organized religion to be a moral, ethical, or connected person. I do want to push back a little bit. You mentioned, it leads to a dark place.
here we go. Sorry. It's been
I
40
love to
seconds.
talk about that little, and kind of, I'd love to expand on that further. I know that's a question later in the podcast, but it's not all dark. I personally see that there's definitely some bright spots. Everything comes with a little bit of good and a little bit of bad, and so I'd like to also explore that, how nuanced these things can get. I do also have a little bit of a background in behavioral science, anthropology, and psychology. Not too much, not too many credentials there, but I do have a background in that. So hopefully that leads some credence to some of the topics we'll expand upon. So.
Yeah, actually, more qualified than me. Shit, I just kind of read a lot of books and a lot of podcasts, things like that. So that's all I got. But awesome. So we're going to get started. So the very first question on the docket, and since we kind of talked on books and kind of discussing that, I was going to see. So what do you think is a book that more people should probably read, or at least once, or might be that's very kind of impactful to you in this case?
Yeah, I'll push back. I'm going to be pushing back against a lot. Pop-out answer. That being said, I don't necessarily agree with there's one size fits all for any kind of book. I believe that, just reading in general is important. Read what interests you. If you are not ready with the psychological scaffolding to be able to absorb some of the higher level books, some of the books that that PhD students are reading, if you're not ready for that, it's not going to help you, even though they're great reads to have. But just get started where you're at, follow your passion. That being said, I do have some recommendations. I personally really love science fiction short stories, as fantasy and fiction has a way of reflecting our own society and our own fears and value structures in a way that just reframes it. And some of my favorites, one of my personal favorites is, and I'm going to slaughter the name here because I've only ever read it, I don't know how to pronounce it, is Those Who Walked Away from Omelas. Mm-hmm. And that's, there are a lot of different layers in that story, but it's basically the cost of a utopia is a horrible and radical injustice. And I think it allows people to more critically say what privilege is worth the injustice. And is it worth it if everything else is perfect, but this horrible, horrible thing is going on? Is it worth it to stay there, or, should you turn away and walk away from it? And it's something to consider. I don't think it gives some suggestions to what the answer may be. That being said, it can be seen with a level of nuance. And so that's just one I appreciate a lot. And
What answer
go back
did
to
you
him.
glean from the book, or what you think might
Well,
be
considering that
applicable?
I've walked away from a high demand religion, I would say I would like to hope that everyone would have the power to walk away from something that is built on tragedy and such a horrible injustice. That being said, I think it is open to a level of interpretation and nuance. And at some point, we do all need to participate in society and organization.
Yeah, I mean, we're human species. I mean, we're built on like collaboration. Like we can't do it on our
Yes,
own.
yes.
Unfortunately, I'd love to do that, but that's not on the docket. So
You know,
yeah,
I do go into, some of the questions, I do go into it a little bit about how much humans need society, but um, there's some points where it's time to walk away.
yeah, absolutely. Got to be able to maintain your own sense of identity, but also be able to work kind of with other people. So it's a
Right.
balance of both, like
Right.
the yin and yang kind of thing. Got to be able to balance both. Awesome, cool. Well, I know for me personally, I think a book that a lot of people could stand to read. You'll probably be able to guess what it is. It's probably not too hard. I think you'd be smart enough to. Yeah. Any guesses?
Well, considering you do have a religious background, I would guess probably a Bible.
Well, first, that's so easy. Okay, the Bible. Really? That's what you think of me? That's the first thing you expect? No, I'm doing the book. That's like wow. I'm offended. I'm offended. Oh, no, it's not. It's not the Bible. Oh no, great read too. Oh, I actually never read the whole Bible myself. Honestly, I think I only probably
Oh,
read
okay,
maybe like
interesting.
45% of it, if that. Not really.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. I'm a cherry picker. I'm just like, there's just some of these things that kind of like read or like read more than others. Think like Job. I think like that one. Then I'm not going into all that. But yes, there are some things aspects about the Bible I do read. But I think mine would probably be 12 Rules for Life. I think that's pretty solid. I know Jordan Peterson right now is kind of more of a conservative kind of chill dude. But back when he first started, he was more about the ideas of getting down to what people kind of need in order to kind of move forward in society. And I feel like that kind of book talked a lot about like responsibility, kind of finding what you're good at, what your gift is in the world, like figuring out a load or a burden that you can carry yourself that kind of help you feel more useful and kind of allow you to move forward. And that spoke a lot to me, especially in college, because I didn't really have an idea of what the fuck I was doing and what I wanted to do. So reading that book kind of helped me solidify, like, what my core values are, or what I'm striving for, like, really what direction I kind of want to take my life in. It was kind of a good guiding light for me. Very, very deep book, a lot of big words in there. So it's gonna it takes a lot to digest and read. It's not an easy read at all, but I think it's very helpful for those that might be a little bit lost on their path or what they kind of want to help do and kind of help craft an identity for themselves and kind of start walking that. So I think that's a good read if you ever want to check it out. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
believe I had to read segments of it for college, so I do
You
agree a
had
lot
to
of them might
read
feel
segments of it?
controversial. Yeah,
Really?
at least some of Jordan Peterson's work. I'm not sure if it was that exact one, but
Oh,
I do remember having to go into him a little bit. Yes,
oh.
he's a controversial figure now, but some of the work that he's done in psychology has been valuable.
Yeah, I think that thing's really, really valuable, especially like when you talked about the people always make fun of the lobsters thing, which I mean, hey, fair enough. But when you go into the actual biology like of the lobsters, it's kind of talked about in the book on how they actually have the same like dopaminergic system that or similar system that human beings do, to where if a lobster starts succeeding and winning a lot, it creates more dopamine, kind of makes them bigger, stronger, to where it kind of creates a cycle of positive reinforcement to where you start winning recurringly. However, lobsters that like might go against each other, if they lose, it actually hurts their dopaminergic system, and they actually start becoming like weaker and more feeble, and it kind of reinforces the cycle of negativity and kind of rolling backwards. So and apparently humans operate in a similar fashion. It's like the more like we society looks upon us like favorably, the stronger, more confident that we feel. That confidence is pervasive, so it leads to more open doors, more opportunities kind of down the line. Whereas someone that may come from not such a great background, a lot more strife and self-esteem issues, they may not reach out as much, they may not seek more opportunities, so then they may not be identified as a good candidate for job positions because they're kind of cheapest, they don't really kind of speak up and things like that. And it creates a negative reinforcement cycle. So I think there
Right.
is kind of some truth there, trying to help build good habits, like cleaning up your room, for example. I know people make fun of that one too, but it's about like similar to Dave Ramsey's snowball of how like if you start small with the things you can handle first, that builds up confidence for you to help take care of the bigger things as time goes on. But yeah, things like that, the kind of thing from the book. I'm like, that's good.
Right, and that does work psychologically for humans. So absolutely, I don't know if we necessarily have time to get into all of that, but yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely agree. That is
You-
that is
that's
how
bullshit.
humans work, and the
You're just
cycles
like,
and the background that someone comes with. The circumstances of where they started out from will greatly impact the outcome of where they're going. Very nuanced, very deep discussion would probably take up more time than you have, but
yeah,
yes,
yes,
that
absolutely.
is
This is
something.
turned to a six hour podcast. Like, awesome. Awesome. Okay, cool. So we get great books. So kind of going into that, and like, so we kind of touched on some resources that might be helpful for people to kind of help guide them through like a time of strife in their life. But I don't know. What do you think? You think is there a pervasive sense of like nihilism and cynicism that's been growing over these last few decades, not just here in America, but probably like around the world?
I mean, I think if you look at the Census Bureau and the actual facts, yes, it is. We are seeing a rise of nihilism, atheism, a lot of shift towards um, those sorts of ideologies. And I think a more interesting question from that isn't necessarily is that it is yes or no, is why? Why is this occurring? Um, and setting aside a lot of arguments uh, that there's always going to be some level of like growing pain. Every generation has some level of, things that they get like a little excessively blamed for. For millennials, it was laziness. For Gen Z, we're seeing, the argument of nihilism. So I have seen a little bit of that. Um, that being said, I think there's several factors going into the rise of cynicism and nihilism. Um, one of them is the mass access to information, specifically other moral frameworks. People are able to challenge their pre-existing religious beliefs, pre-existing social cultural beliefs. They're able to see all of the different ways that things can be done, and they look at their own and go, "Hold on, there's issues here. Look at over there, they're able to do this better." Or humans, we have access to the information to be able to see a better way and realize we're kind of stuck the way we are. Um, how big the system is and what it will take to actually enact meaningful change. And that can be a little bit of daunting. And when faced with that, a lot of people can turn to a more, well, then I guess nothing I do matters if I'm trying to battle the whole world.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen a lot of that. Like, even like people our age, or like, or at work, or just a lot of people just feeling down and out. Like they just kind of want to just tap out, or just like on autopilot, basically, just trying to just fuck it, just kind of just ride out every day as it comes, and just it's a bummer.
and I think, doom scrolling, access to social media, it'll also give that it's a cycle, it's a feed, it'll give you what you're looking for. So I think that also plays a factor into it is everyone's being depressed. Misery loves company.
Yeah,
Although
and
I don't
you're
necessarily believe nihilism and cynicism is a bad thing, but the negative sides of it is definitely being amplified by social media. Not to demonize social media, but that is one of the
the
cycles that it can
drawbacks.
go
Yeah.
into.
It's because
Um,
you're seeing like the highlight reel of everyone else's life, right? Because people don't post like, hey, just dad just died, dad's just died. It's not like people don't post like the negative things. They post the things that like feel like get the most like social favor. So then you're constantly seeing the highlights. Everyone else's like fantastic life. You're there in the office, just like, well, fuck me. This is terrible.
I think even more than that is that people are able to open up and speak about the negative experiences, and nothing affects, the one of our strongest urges is our anger. It's there for a reason. It's our fight and our fight and flight instinct. And so if something pisses us off, we are more likely to react on it. We're more likely to share and engage with it. And so it's also part of the social media machine of how to get more engagement. You piss people off. There's a reason rage baiting.
Outrage culture. Yeah.
So some levels of being mad at the institution, being mad at religion, being mad at all of these things is built to get that reaction. So we'll keep that in mind. Um, I think another reason why we're probably growing more towards atheism and nihilism is the atheists and nihilists are no longer being thrown in mental institutions, getting killed off.
That's good. I agree with that. That's nothing. We have a common
Yeah,
foundation there.
yeah.
I think that's bad.
Listen, 100 years ago, I would have been lobotomized.
Oh no, gee.
uh, and I certainly wouldn't be allowed to speak on a podcast, right?
That's probably true. I don't think.
You know, so, putting that in perspective, people are able to share those beliefs even more. Not only are we able to share it on a global scale and have access to the information, but people are actually able to speak
Right.
out about these things of like, hey, there's some criticisms with religion, there's some criticisms with the system, um, the tools for deconstruction. Um, and another interesting thing that we also get to see is we have more information, and following that line, we have more information than we ever have before. And
Yeah.
that actually leads to an overload of our brains. We are constantly affecting our nervous system with all of this information, and two things tend to occur. Either it leads to, just a lack of it leads to a lack of empathy. It leads to apathy. Of this is so daunting. I can't make any change. I can't make any
Yeah. We
impact.
can't
Why bother?
emotionally just
Because there's
absorb all the world's
too
problems because we weren't built for that. Like we're supposed to have
exactly.
like one kind of tribe of maybe 100 people max, and that's all you kind of do about the world. So now us growing to where like the tribe is like now global with like 8 billion people. It's just like it's a lot to keep track of to where you don't even know like sources to trust or like things like that. Like people just feel like their alarm systems are just always ringing because they just
Yeah,
don't know where to look or where to turn to. Add that was come out on social media. Everything is just it's like, no wonder we're losing it. It's a lot.
yeah, yeah. It's too much. Or something else that occurs is either extremism and going down a very, extremist path. And we see that happen with a lot of,
Now, oh yeah, especially recently, especially
yeah, yeah.
especially recently. Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
easier. You'll see a lot more bias. You'll see a lot more, again, with that radicalism, extremism, um, and to the point where you're dealing with um, is it called the blowback effect or something like that? But of just hearing information that criticizes your own belief in the world, you'll double down on your own beliefs even more. And so we're seeing a lot of that, and um, so both the reason we get extremism and nihilism come from the same issues in society.
yeah. Just but now everything's been exaggerated because there's so much of it, right? It's like
Right.
so it wasn't as pervasive before because it's kind of limited to a certain extent, but now it's like almost blown out and unregulated.
Yep.
But part of the thing what I believe in is that if we have be able to kind of talk to each other more, even with differing opinions, and try to have respect for the person, even if you don't even respect the opinion, at least respect the person on the other end. That will allow us to kind of become more unified and kind of find more common ground, and hopefully not be so polarized as we are in today's
Well,
time.
and that's actually kind of leads to my other points of what's kind of causing this is some of the social isolation that we're feeling is we're less in touch with people than we've been with, even though we can, talk to them via a screen, we're less in touch with people than we ever have before. We're not going out and doing things as much. The erosion of third place has been talked about a lot. All of those factors. The more isolated we are, the more humans need other humans. And when you're not able to look someone in the eye and know what your work is going towards, if you're not able to see, I value because I'm able to support my family. This is valuable because I'm able to uplift someone's life. Um, Especially when you're hearing about all of the sorrows going on in the world, and you can't necessarily see the impact that what you're doing has. Or even if you can see a number or a flash on a screen, that doesn't mean the same as looking in someone's eyes and knowing that you've helped their life and created that. And of course, everything's going to feel useless and pointless if you are not able to see the way that impacts the people around you.
Yeah, gotta be able to see it. Gotta have the evidence for it. Otherwise, your brain won't believe it.
Well,
Yeah.
and even so, and this is going to be a little bit more, I guess, a hot button, but I think our current job market also plays an impact of the rise of useless jobs. Even more so, you're not able to see what you created with your hands. Again, digital numbers on a screen. So even in our jobs, there's the feeling of uselessness of like, okay, I'm punching numbers. And tomorrow I'll punch more numbers that don't actually mean anything. There's nothing that it correlates to. We've been so far removed from what jobs physically are. Um, and I think the greater awareness of that, of sitting down
Right.
and realizing, oh,
Yeah,
crap. My job is
we're not really
mostly
seeing the evidence of our work because, like, back in the 1800s, like, like the shoemakers or things like that, they can see like the impact, like, people like wearing their products and stuff like that. But if you're just kind of like an accountant or like an actuary or something like that, you just kind of see numbers on the spreadsheet, making more money for the guy at the very top. It's like you're not really seeing the larger scale of impact that you're having. So it's kind of
yeah.
leads to more discouragement and apathy.
Are you able to take pride in your work if you can't really see it? It's not
Yeah,
tangible. It's not reflected. It's not reflected either in your bank account or in, the if you were to carve your own table or something like that. But you're not able to see that in your living room or see it being passed on to someone in your family. It does alienate us from um, ourselves even more when we're putting all of this effort. Plus, we've increased productivity. Like I don't have the exact number. This is not something I pulled for this, but I think we've increased productivity by about 50% in society in the past 20 years. And I don't see any direct result of it. Wages are fairly the same. It can be very disheartening and
yeah,
lead to a lot of burnout. And if you have expended all of your emotional energy and mental energy on this productivity at a job, and then you're going home, you've already burned it. Human energy is finite. And if you've burned it all at work, you haven't really seen anything for your work, and you're going home, it's a little bit more difficult to suddenly handle the issues of society after that.
yep. Yeah, you get done with a shitty day at work, then come back to TikTok and be like, "Oh, we're doomed." Like,
Yeah,
oh, we're doomed
yeah,
for.
yeah. You're not about to go, I'm gonna actually go ahead and carve that table and give it to my friend who needs one.
Yeah.
You're not able to put more
I
energy
think they call it
into.
like emotional bandwidth or something like that. It's like there's only so many
Right.
things
And
we can give a fuck about in a certain amount of day. To where if we give it too many things we don't care about, we don't have enough to give to the things we do care about.
yeah, I mean, you talked a little bit about dopaminergic activities or what have you, but dopamine, serotonin, all of those chemicals in the brain are finite. We only have a certain amount stored up. There's only so much your brain can, give out at one time. And if you've burned it all out, or you're not doing the kind of activities to restore it properly, guess what? You're not going to be able to do much, and you're not going to be able to feel as happy as normal. It's going to increase depression, burnout, anxiety, all
Yeah,
those fun things.
all the exciting things. Yeah, it's great.
All of the fun things. Yes.
Yeah, but so I think so. Kind of going into that and how to change it, you feel like having more focusing more on communities, kind of like kind of meeting more with the fellow man, and kind of doing more tactile things that you can see the evidence for. You kind of see the direct impact you're having on. It kind of help reverse some of the cynicism effects.
Absolutely. I also think keeping boundaries with your job, the work-life balance, it's
Right.
it's not a joke. It's um, and prioritizing dopaminergic activities or activities that will increase feel good, uh, mental capacity. Things like exercise can help build that up. Eating right, everything, all the things that go. It's would it be a holistic approach? Everything builds on itself, and so any little change that you can make to slowly start building. There's a reason people always give it as advice because it's true. Um, and a lot of people I don't think understand why it's such good advice. But
Yeah.
anything you can do to build yourself a better life will.
Yeah, because people don't really talk about like the reason why behind things. I think
Yeah.
that's what the conservative problems that they have is that they have these traditions that they try to stick to, but they don't know how to explain why the traditions are important. So people decide to abandon it because they don't see a use for it until shit starts falling apart. So I feel like that's being able to explain the reason why we do certain things and not just being it's common knowledge, you should know this, and like being able to elaborate on it further allows us to help our understanding and give it more credence so we actually kind of follow it.
Well, and it's common knowledge for some, new for others. As I mentioned, scaffolding is a concept of things have to build on themselves, and also not getting overwhelmed with trying to think you have to fix everything at once. Just
Yeah.
pick one thing. Just pick one thing a little bit. Just. Uh,
I can do it all, David. Now I can do it
no,
all, like,
no. Start with a 5 minute walk.
yeah.
Let's start by going on short little walks for our mental health. And then maybe after that's going well, maybe try
Save the
eating
world.
right and putting down the phone a little bit. Maybe after you're feeling more confident from eating right, going on little walks, maybe it's time to get social. Let it build where it comes most naturally, what's going to be easiest for you to start, and just start building.
Yeah, it takes time, and this is what having like a therapist or a life coach can also help identify those small goals for you over time too, to kind of progress and monitor that. I know even for me, I'm trying to get like better, like training calories and stuff like that now. I'm just like trying to be more proactive and like forward thinking, just kind of set small steps for myself that I actually kind of stick to instead of broad sweeping changes that I'm gonna abandon in like a week. So
Yeah, and consistency is going to be more important than any sort of grand token gesture.
yeah, yeah, consistency is it's hard. It's hard to be consistent for sure.
Uh,
Awesome. So now I'm going to get to the fun part. Okay, excellent. So going into also part of the reason why I have you on here today to discuss your religious background as well as that how you separated yourself from that religion and trying to maintain your own identity, autonomy, and independence, kind of craft your own identity and value structure outside of the one you feel like was just kind of given to you, and how you were able to do that and what that journey was like to kind of help illustrate people to how if they're in a point in their life where they feel like everything's kind of falling apart and they're lost and they know what to do, might kind of give them some insight on how they can kind of navigate through that.
yeah, absolutely. I would love to get into some of that. So, as I mentioned, I was raised in a high demand religion. A lot of people know it as Mormonism. I knew it as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Outward looking in, I know a lot of people like say, "Oh yeah, isn't that freaky religion?" But when
Hashtag
growing
free.
up, sorry, I dropped something. When growing up, that was just the water I swam in. You know, it seemed it was normal to me, and honestly, it was a fairly idyllic childhood. There are so many good things when it comes to a tight knit community like that. Um, families are very well valued and supported. They do a lot of weekly activities. You had a very clear life path given to you. So there was really no question of what you needed to do, what the next step was in life. It was very, very clearly laid out. The problem started to really arise coming into young adulthood. And as you start to, they started to double down on some of the religious indoctrination. I was starting to go to as a teenager, going to daily seminary classes where you would study the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and that became so much part of your life. And that's when I also started to develop religious OCD or scrupulosity, where the more you learn about it, the more things you should be doing, and some of the lessons of like, well, are you filling your lamp with oil? Like as an analogy for, are you being faithful enough? Are you doing enough? A lot of the talks and the words from what we believed were prophets and men of God were about, you should be doing more. You are not doing enough. You need to, has the devil won this battle, in your heart, and constantly being worried that I wasn't doing enough, and the messages from it just reinforcing it. And even talking to some people now, they'll go, "No, no, no, that's not what it's like." But that's what the experience was. That's what it felt like. A constant um, pressure on the psyche, and then realizing that there was only one path to lead. There were some other things you could do to get there, a little bit of a meandering path, but ultimately my job as a woman was to get married as soon as possible and to start having children and building an eternal family and being and serving a husband. And that was it. That was your goal. And you could get an education, but it was only really to serve the children. Or, you could get a job, but that was only really to serve the husband, and it should be something that's released when it's done. And the rush to get into relationships definitely gave way to you have a lot of toxic relationships propped up by that sort of religion. If a man is told that he's from the man has the power of God, the woman not really, and so the woman's supposed to serve the man, that props up a lot of toxic relationships with that power imbalance. You are inherently going into a relationship with a power imbalance.
Damn.
um, Women learned sacrifice and self-abandonment before anything else. Um, you are supposed to, a constant lesson of there's more you can give. What more can I give? What more can I give? There were even talks and lessons of how it is better to die than to lose your virtue, and that it'd be better, and that you were supposed to doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. And this led to a lot of self-abandonment, disassociation,
Yeah, it's like you weren't even a person. Basically, you just existed just to serve other people. Like
Yeah,
no.
I mean, there are ways that the personality could come through, and there are some incredible people in religion, and there are benefits to it. But if that's not supposed to be the life path for you, if that's not true to your heart, it's going to break you down. Um, and I remember sitting and wondering, if God loves me, why does this have to be the path? This path is making me absolutely miserable. I hate all of this. And I'm like, well, you give up yourself and come to me. Those were the lessons we were taught is you're supposed to give up yourself. You are supposed to sacrifice. And I just thought that was bringing me closer to God, and that all of the pushback was just, honestly, I thought it was the devil trying to fight against me, or like this was the great trial that God had in store for me. That, yeah, I have to go on this path, and my biggest sacrifice would be having to follow this because I was absolutely fucking miserable. I wanted to die.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to get dark on here, but it
No, yeah.
was not the path for me. Um, and you also have, if it's all this is the whole community, this is your whole life. This is, being able to rely on a Christ-like figure. A lot of my identity was tied to this, my support structure, and knowing that leaving it would be leaving my family, it would be leaving everything I'd ever known. That I didn't know what getting out would look like, because that was not a reality you were allowed to even comprehend. Um, as there was no one forcing you in this religion. It wasn't, someone with a baseball bat. It was your own. They raised you to doubt your own brain.
Yeah,
Again, the doubt your doubts before
kind of make your own
yeah,
prison. It's a lot easier
yeah,
to
yeah. They were.
deal.
It is a psychological warfare. Um, Now getting out. What that looked like for me was started in small little ways of just, especially talking to people that my religion would consider on the not going to heaven list. I developed a lot of queer friendships, started in high school, where it was very confusing for me because I wanted to like them. I always got along with them. But, God said, no, this is a sin. And so I started kind of nuancing it a little bit because I love the queer community so much. And I'm like, why does God not want them to be with people they love? Why does God not?
Fair question. Yeah.
Yeah, why does God not hear about this? Because my prophets were very clear about what was going to get people into heaven. In fact, the exclusion policy, there was a policy that if you were, queer people couldn't get baptized or join the church. And if your parents were queer, you had to basically disown them and you had to be over 18. And that was a very confusing time. And it's been reversed, thanks to a lot of the efforts of people within the Mormon community speaking out against it. Um, but that was still something that our prophets had said. And, you know, I continued even into after high school, after college. I continued to make connections with people in the queer community, and a lot of my friends and family members had started kind of falling away from the church as well. And just developing that empathy of being able to see them face to face. Like, these were the people supporting me and loving me more so than my religious community. It definitely gave a lot of confusion and cognitive dissonance. And as I was diving into that confusion and cognitive dissonance, like, it would not leave my head. And I was commuting about an hour each way to work at the time. And I like to joke that I killed my God on my morning commute because I finally questioned it enough to the point where I'm like, I don't think it started off with, I don't think the prophets are right about this one. Cause it's very clear. Cause I'm like, the Bible doesn't really say that much about queer people, but the prophets interpret it a very particular way. And I'm like, I don't think they're quite right about this. I don't, but they're supposed to be infallible. They're men of God. You listen to the prophets. You listen to the authority of the church. It is obedience. Obedience is the first law of the gospel. The first thing we're ever taught is God wants obedience. And I'm like, I don't know that they're right about this one, guys.
No,
And
no.
and I'm like, I remember it was almost like hearing a voice, but it definitely came from within of just, hey, this might not be true, and that's okay. And I nearly got into a car accident. Like, what are you saying? But I'm like, I don't think they're right. All of the things they said, this doesn't seem right. And then breaking that, everything else, it's called a shelf break in the ex-Mormon community. And it's basically, you had so many doubts about the faith and things that it's like, God will explain in the next life. We're not meant to understand everything. You put it on that shelf, and slowly that shelf gets heavier and heavier of like, why couldn't people of color hold the priesthood until the 70s? Oh, that's a little bit heavier. We don't understand that one yet. Why can't queer people,
Yeah,
exist?
all
Oh,
the
that's a
questions
little
that.
bit heavier. Why is this life full of misery when God told us this is the plan of happiness? Oh, it's getting really heavy on there. And eventually everything just shattered. And it felt completely world shattering. And there were a couple of things I tried to cling on to, but once that broke and I started looking up resources, completely obliterated in a matter of days. Um, it was led to a spiral of research and deconstruction. Mormon Story podcast was probably one of the most influential things in that time because they lay it out very clearly. They have a lot of just similar structure to this, of like a lot of ex-Mormons getting up and telling their stories and telling what made their shelf break. And then people who have done the history and the factual evidence and realizing none of this meshes. This is all, pretty much fiction. And I was able to for the first time, reach out to some of my friends that I had to cut off. Like, I was encouraged um, by my partner at that time to cut off people in my life who were ex-Mormon and, non-Mormons, and being able to reach out to them again and like, hey, what was your experience? And them giving me even more resources. And it led to a total deconstruction. And part of it I was still doubting that it was still the right thing, if what I was still doing was sin, the whole universe unraveling. It felt like for a moment, whatever could happen, and that would make just as much sense as my entire life deconstructing. Like, I'm like, the sky could open up and it could start raining rabbits, and I'd go, you know what? That makes sense, because apparently my God's not real.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a paradigm break. It was,
any answer to what was going on would have been better than just this spiraling void that I was total disassociation. Part of the deconstruction was also, while I was still trying to cling to the God figure, it was realizing that I would accept hell because it sounds better than whatever God, the Mormon God, to clarify, was doing. Like, okay, if he's sending queer people to hell, like, I'm sorry, God's sins are outnumbering my own at this stage. Like, I'm not answering to him. He's not to answer to me. Why would I want to be in the presence of a God that does that? Why would I want anything that he has to offer? And so that was part of the deconstruction and reclaiming of creating my own morality. Like, my morality is stronger than my former gods. Okay, does it sound arrogant to anyone on the outside looking in? Maybe. I don't care anymore. This guy's meeting, God's meeting me in the back of a Denny's, and I'm bringing a baseball bat. Yeah, we're throwing down because all I saw was a lot of the foibles of man, reflected. I realized that this was not a God that made us in his image. Mankind made him in ours, made him a very, very human figure. And I don't want that for divinity. Divinity is supposed to be truth, light, and love. And this ain't it. This ain't it.
I just got word from Chief, and he let me know this thing. Yeah,
And so how do
I
I
feel the same way
find
a lot of times. Like even with my own religion, like there's been a couple of times like small groups like at A&M, like I went to. They're like, "Yep, we have to help out the gay people to not be that, not be that, be grace." And I'm just like, I don't think it's our job to.
you can often tell something that's like, again, a high demand religion, or that's moving away from truth, is if they're having to redefine basic things of like, this is what love means. And if they're trying to redefine what love means, no, we know in our hearts, we know what love means. When you look at someone and you feel that love, you're not caring about who they're marrying. You just love them. And I think one of the biggest things that I felt and experienced, I compared it a lot to, parenthood. And, again, our God said we came to this earth and obedience is the first law, and we have to follow this very rigid path to prove that we're good enough to join him in heaven. And I thought about that, and he's supposed to be our divine parent, right? And I thought about that, and I went, that has nothing to do with parenthood. I mean, yeah, you want a toddler to behave, but like ultimately, especially if you're sending a child out on their own, you're not doing that to see how well they'll obey and listen to you and follow your exact path that you set out. Like when you're sending them off to college, you want them to grow. You want them to experience. You want them to figure out their own morality and structure. You want them to grow and maybe even become better than you. It has never been a case. It's never, unless in the cases, and this is why high command religions are what I would say abusive. Because unless the parent is an absolute ass and like, no, you have to be exact, that's not a loving parent, that's an abusive parent.
Yeah.
And realizing that, I'm like, again, if there is a God, he wants growth, or they want growth. They want to see you grow and to see how you develop on your own. You can still rely on them for support. They can advise you. I think the very standard, the American dream, I think that path is a path, and it can be a good one if someone needs that. If someone needs that level of structure in their life, absolutely go for that. If that's going to bring you joy and happiness, but also don't reject or mock or tear down someone who's realizing that there's a different path that they need to walk.
Yeah. So I guess for you, how did you come to your current value system? Like, was that kind of based on religious principles, or like did you take from like other schools of thought? Like, how did you kind of, and then how did you even know that those are things that aligned with you? Like, what was like, it's like your internal like check-in process to see if this is like aligned with who you want to be or who you feel like you are?
That's a really good question. So I think some of it is the value structure that I was raised with. Some of it came from the religion. Ultimately, I think, my parents raised me with a really good value structure, and it came more from my parents than from the religion itself, because they were people who led by example. But also realizing from a very secular point of view was, humans are meant to support each other. And as humans, the survival of the fittest really means the survival of the tribe. So what can I do to best help? If I wanted a logical reason for what I do, I think some of it is just innate to being a caring and loving person, having that, I think goodness is goodness, and there's something, in natural about that, but trying to put a logical explanation on it, it would be, what causes the least psychological harm to others? What can help them best create their authentic selves and authentic lives? How can we better our tribe, better the people around us, and make a positive psychological impact? And we can see, a very tangible impact of that.
Yeah, so you're saying it's kind of more like an intuition, because that's honestly that's my suspicion too. Is like it's not really. I mean, you can try to put numbers and statistics to it, but then that's how you start rationalizing very bad things that's happened before
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the past. I think there's a level of almost human spirit or something like that that kind of prompts us to be good. There's also, I think, evil there too. I think lines good evil runs down every man's heart. And it's up to us to choose how we want to navigate it. But I think both of those intuitions kind of lie in us, and then it's up to us to kind of figure out how we want to put that forward in the world.
Before we had philosophies, we had intuition. Humans were figuring this out before we had the language to describe it. And even fellow animal species, there's a reason. You need to be careful talking about wolves in a podcast setting, but there's a reason they develop in packs. There's a reason why there's a reason why there are so many communities, and there's a reason why even animals will instinctively, a lot of them will come together and help one another. And it's can be something innate in part of us, and it's everyone has their own paths and navigations to rationalize and understand. But I think even without religion, and even if someone was never raised with a religion, as I mentioned, I had a very strict moral structure, and I'm very glad that I had that, because it was actually that moral structure. And that, we're supposed to love people. Well, I actually know what love looks like and should look like. And so I'm going to follow that, helping to deconstruct. But I think that comes even without religion. What was it? I believe it's a Penn and Teller quote where they're like, why do you not go around murdering? If you're an atheist, why do you not go around murdering people? And it's like, I go around murdering and raping and pillaging as many people as I want. That number is zero. I actually like, you actually like being a good person. I don't need a threat of damnation to be a good person. I want to be a good person because I want to be a good person. I want to help my tribe. Some of the thing that really settled home for me is I almost have a higher value on human life now that I have deconstructed from religion than I did before. I will say I am an atheist, an agnostic atheist now. There could be something out there, and if it shows evidence, cool. Like I'm gonna do my thing. It's not going to define my life. I will try to be as moral and ethical as possible. And if it turns out I got it right, awesome. If I got it wrong, I still think I was a good person. And again, they will answer to me if they're fucked up. Um, but I almost value human life more than I did before because I realized how fragile it is. If this is it, if this is all we get, is we are just a bundle of neurons in this world that's just by a infinitesimally small chance of existing, and the uniqueness of human life. When you stop and realize that grandeur and that impossibility, you realize just how precious it is. Because in all of creation, the millions and trillions of stars out in the world, and you got the chance to exist. You got the chance to be part of this life and interact with others, and realizing that every single human life is just that valuable. You kind of sit back and look at that majesty of that, and you can't help but just it hits you, man, and realizing it's the only one, and you want to keep that precious. You want to see them grow and achieve and self-actualize. You want to foster that, or at least that was true for me. Of just sitting, and it just hits me even now. It's hitting me of the majesty of life and this experience that we have, and I think that's kind of the way. I am a little bit of a nihilist, but you realize that there is value in just existing. That yeah, maybe nothing in life matters, but it still kind of does. It's still your life. It is still this impossible thing that is able to take root.
It actually reminds me like the meme of nothing matters, like nothing matters, and it's like nothing matters. Like, nothing,
nothing matters, or it does matter because it's you and it's your life.
You put the
your
meaning
life gets to matter because it's yours, and other people's lives get to matter because it's theirs. Like you get this one shot to experience. You can, again, if let's go with the atheistic belief. If we blink out of existence, but you got to exist, you got to experience all of it. How do you want it to go? Do you want to, and this can be a little bit of what brings value structure a little bit back into it, of like, yeah, you get this one shot to exist. Do you want to spend it in a jailhouse? Do you want to spend it with everyone hating you? No positive connection, no healthy connection with another human being, which has been proven to show, like, do you want to do it? How do you want to play this out? And for me, I want to do what I can to uplift these other infinitely majestic little creatures, just like me. I'm a creature, and uplifting myself as well in the process. Or do I want to spend it in, ultimately leading to further suffering? And that can be a way to kind of hold on to an anchor. There's so many. I'm not a nihilistic guy by any means. These are just some thoughts that I've had. I do recommend No Nonsense Spirituality. That's been one. She's a nihilist, and she's actually has a much more comprehensive, reasonings and how to crawl back out of the nihilistic void. There's different stages of nihilism. There is the nothing in life matters one, as you mentioned, where you are in this spiral of doom and almost a solipsism kind of viewpoint, and then how to slowly crawl out of that and give yourself meaning. Because nihilism is what happens when you deconstruct all of your religious structures and all of your structures and systems. You deconstruct our socioeconomic system, you deconstruct religion, you deconstruct relationships and what happiness is, and it's all just dopamine and neurological impulses, and you deconstruct to that point. It gets a little bit dark there.
Yeah.
But that's when you can start, when you've hit that bottom, you can start reconstructing and going, okay, um, you can take a more spiritual approach. There is a lot of spiritualism that you can still have even after deconstructing religion. Um, and you can even deconstruct, not, deconstruct deconstruction. And you go so deep that it just kind of starts coming back around full circle. You're like, okay, if dopamine feels good, why don't I do more things that will best enhance the dopamine? It's like, why don't I live a slightly better life? Why don't I
Yeah.
know I enjoy spending
But
time with
there's
friends?
good ways and bad ways to seek the dopamine.
True, true.
So that
But
comes
one
into
blows through your dopamine reserves and leaves you with nothing else, and ultimately destroys your capacity to experience dopamine. And again, I'm not the perfect guide on this. These are just some thoughts, and I wish I came better prepared with some of those, with a better essay on those, on why we should do the right thing. Although there, is it a lot of philosophies of like what we owe to each other and utilitarianism, and I'd recommend watching The Good Place because
I
you know
watch that too. That's a good show.
that is huge. That is why that one was a spiritual experience for me watching that one.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
definitely, that gives a lot of good reasons. There's so many good arguments for why, um, yeah, uh, for that reconstruction and where to reconstruct to. And again, finding a nihilistic guide. If you do find yourself in that pit, slowly reconstructing of, okay, if it's meaningless, how do I want to show up for the world? Do I, how to value other humans, how to,
Yeah, so to speak. Yeah, that takes time to kind of set aside time to kind of look internally and kind of see what kind of matters to you and be able
yeah,
to
and,
answer those questions. Anyway.
yeah. Well, sometimes we need to fall to pieces just to see which parts no longer fit us as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, paradigm breaks. Absolutely, it's character development. It's good. So, what
Yeah, we deconstructed from the plot.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know. It's like the hero's journey, or like the monomyth, right? I mean, I feel like,
Yeah,
at least from my belief, I feel like the things you go through in life are things that you are kind of supposed to go through to kind of create you into who you're supposed to be, right? So it's kind of like irons in a fire. But that's what I feel like is just, when you have a break like that, there's supposed to be some kind of lesson that you're supposed to adopt, and then you kind of help bring that to other people, and that kind of relates to your life purpose, you
yeah.
know?
And not everyone has to deconstruct denialism and atheism like I did. In fact, I'm a big proponent of finding a healthy way to incorporate religion into, your life. It took a while for me to come around because my first instinct was burn it all down. If they're lying to us, if they're using this to control us, burn it down.
Yeah.
That being said, the further I go along, the more space I have from it, the more I realize there is a value in religious community, and there is a value with the shared myth and religion, that we should be able to anchor onto. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's important for people. Some people need that structure. Some people need the baseline of religion to have a little bit more of a moral guidepost, and
Yeah,
that's
like
okay.
there's actually there's a guy. His name is John Vervaeke. Yeah, so psychologist, and I'll give you my handwriting. Anyway, psychologist. But he talked about something called the nature of transjective truth, to where this is kind of thing where my beliefs kind of come in. It's like there's a lot of Christian fundamentalists that believe that what happened in the Bible literally happened. I don't believe that whatsoever. I think there's no, but I do believe that there is truths in there that are true, but like the Bible is basically a series of parables. It's supposed to just kind of help represent the human experience and how to best navigate it through stories, because we actually adopt more of our understanding through storytelling as we develop as human beings than we did from like facts or statistics and things like that. So I believe the Bible is just more of like a group of stories to kind of help us navigate our experience, and there's truth in those stories. A lighter example would be like Green Eggs and Ham, for example. Like, the whole premise of that book is to don't be afraid to try new things because you might actually like it, right? So even though
Or
there's
that
not
some of
literally,
or that some of your friends can be incredibly annoying when they want you to try new things. That's
absolutely,
also from it.
that's what I took. But yeah, it's like just there's not like a little guy named Sam who's going around giving people like spoiled ham, but it's like it's more about how like if you're not afraid to try new things, to kind of that allow you to build better relationships, better connections, and experience more of the great things in life by not being so close-minded. So the book's not true, but the truth in the book is true, or at the very least usable. And that's more of, I think, what I'm kind of more leaning towards. And I think that's also Peterson talked about a little bit too, is that like it's not like a literal belief in God, but more like the spirit of God is the belief that life is worth living, or love, for example. Like he equates that is the God, so to speak. Like it's not like a
Yeah.
literal person or manifestation. It's more like the spirit of being able to move forward, almost.
And absolutely agreed. And that's where should I ever return to Christianity, that would be the framework I would do, and that's what I encourage um, everyone to kind of go towards. I think everyone could be served by a little bit of deconstruction from the systems that they're in, especially if it's one that keeps them trapped. If there's something inauthentic about the current religious, circle or system that you're in, even beyond religion, if there's something that feels inauthentic, and it's sometimes hard to parse out, especially when a lot of dogmaticism has been piled on over time. It's hard to get that mental break, and it only really happens when you're ready for it, and that's something that only you can work on.
And it's
Um,
gonna be bad too. When it hits, it hits me.
you know what? There's no growth that doesn't come without a little bit of pain.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I would encourage everyone to, again, deconstruct a little bit and nuance, their religious beliefs a little bit, because if it cannot be flexible enough for you to feel genuine and true love and empathy towards your fellow human beings, then it is not there to serve you.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, very, very well put. That's awesome. Thanks for that too. I know it can be trying to go into the background and everything. Kind of revisiting that stuff can be difficult. So I appreciate transparency. But we want to talk about it and everything. So.
You know what? It's something that I love being able to talk about. If it helps anyone else on their journey, then my suffering was well spent. Um,
Thank you for your service.
I'm not ashamed or sad or hiding this story whatsoever. It's something that there are other parts to it that might be a little bit more touchy, but this is something that I think if more people are open about their story, as I mentioned, we have with the mass access to information and the mass access to other moral frameworks and belief structures. This is just one more story of, you know, giving way and leading the way to a
Yeah. I mean,
different frameworks.
I think that's why I go through this stuff, so we kind of share those experiences, like with other people. Like, I think it's tied to what we're put on this earth to do. At least for me. I think it's our podcast. This is all from fucking nice guy syndrome stuff that I learned about back in college. And I'm just like, oh. It's like shit. Like, dear God. and that's why I started, so I can kind of help out other guys, because like noticing they're all kind of going through other stuff like this, and then just kind of led me to believe like there's a lot of people pleasers out there that are not living the lives that they want to be. And if I'm navigating this path, maybe I can show how I'm navigating it and kind of help them, kind of like overcome them, kind of empower them, and see what become better people and live better lives. So.
And you know what? To tie it to this, a lot of people pleasing can sometimes come from some religious extremism. As I mentioned, a lot of my people pleasing came from the teaching that women have to sacrifice and serve others, and that your value is in the service you can provide. And so that's something that helped me break away from it. And so if anyone's religion is like, no, you got to give all of yourself up, that can be a way to start taking that.
Red flag. Just like, maybe there's some. Maybe
Well, that's the only way to heaven. You don't really have the tools to deconstruct it, but maybe this helps give someone, if they find it, maybe this will help give them some tools for deconstruction.
Yeah. So then, so the next part of this, I want to talk about fictional character. Is there a character in fiction that you feel like, or even real life that exists, that you feel you kind of relate to the most to, and why that is? Why that's the case?
I mean, there's a lot of characters that you can relate to, or that I relate to. Mine's more of a character archetype more than anything else. I always liked the wild, crazy, smart talking, sassy, rebellious person. So you're Gage from Borderlands, Jinx from Arcane, all of those, fire spitters, kind of spitfire characters. I always had a really deep connection to them. And when I was the deepest in my religious indoctrination, I just remember sitting around and being so depressed of like, I want to be this character. Like if I would, I would write stories and I would play, I was able to do things like play, RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons. Part of the religion frowned upon it, but I was able to nuance and out of that. But it's a long story, but all of my characters follow this kind of same archetype of this spitfire rebel, multiple piercings. Wasn't allowed to have piercings in the religion. and I felt this longing inside of me, like I want to be this person, and I didn't know where it came from, and I always felt a lot of guilt and sadness that I couldn't. And it wasn't until I finally deconstructed the religion, and that was one of the guiding fires that kind of got me out of it. Was no, I can't be this spitfire. I can't be like this. And I realized I was stepping in that authentic person. One of the ways that I was able to step into her and realize she was always there. She just came out in different ways. I was suppressing her so much. Um, and suddenly she was able to come out. And that gives me a little bit of an idea whenever I'm looking towards, how do you know your own authenticity? It's what are you projecting? What patterns, what character archetypes are you gravitating towards? And that can teach you a lot about yourself. Um, so,
Yeah, I think I read somewhere like the top two or three traits of your. I think no, you pick like two or three physical characters, and the top trait that you love about those characters the most are the ones that you embody, which is why you like those characters too. So I read about that. I was like, oh shit, that's cool. Look at that.
yeah. So what are some of your characters in fiction, Nicholas?
I think for me, I think MCU Iron Man is pretty. I think with him, I kind of understand that. Like the whole thing of like he like kind of pretends to kind of be standoffish, but really he's probably the Avenger that cares the most. He just doesn't know how to how to do it. Makes a lot of mistakes as he tries to work better to be a better person, but he's just trying to always improve, always innovate, always making connections between things. Piss people off a lot, but he always means well, and he's willing to sacrifice when he really needs to. Every time his friends or his loved ones were in danger, he was willing to lay his life on the line. It's like he was a good person. He didn't know how to be good, but he was but he was a good person and made the best call at the end of the day. So I think he's a character I really identify with as well. But I was looking into it. I noticed like a little bit like a segue. This is something I didn't prepare for ahead of time in the conversation. But I'm not sure, like Myers Briggs personality type,
Yeah.
MBTI. So when I looked at the characters that you had brought up, the characters are ENTP, I think, for Gage, and then from Jinx is like ENFP or something like that. So and I was saying that because that's also my like Tony Stark, like Iron Man, ENTP. A lot of characters I also relate to are also ENTP characters as well. Kind of based in the whole doing things that you're really not supposed to be doing, but more for the exploration of the truth of the truth and trying to help people. Devil's advocate, likes debating, likes likes talking about ideas and things like that. Very not the best when it comes to pen and paper and making like a plan of consistency. But we'll learn a whole bunch, a shit ton of topics, mile wide, puddle deep. But learn how to string together a sentence and all these ideas in a very beautiful, artistic way. Even though I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically
I think personality tests can be an interesting tool. I do caution against, relying on them fully, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking it's like when I looked into mine, 'cause I first looked at MBTI, get more into it when I was back in college. But when I first learned about it, I'm just like, oh, this is why I'm fucking crazy. This makes a lot of sense. It starts adding together all the things like why I think the way I do and like why I care about the things I do. And how I navigate the world, and like I think it's also a useful tool for people. Like you said, don't take it as gospel, right? Because there's 16 personalities and 8 billion people, so it's not going to fit you one to one. But it'll at least be like a nice guiding principle to see, like, okay, this is why I might navigate certain situations like the way I do, or this might be more of a kind of career I might be able to lean towards more. Just kind of give you more insight to how you operate and who you are, so you can navigate and use your strengths and kind of stay away from some of those things that might be kind of weaker in.
Yeah, yeah. And next we can talk about zodiacs. Anyway,
Anyway, we talk about zodiac. I don't fully believe in zodiac, but even then, some zodiacs, I'm just like, hey, I'm like,
I
it's
think when
good.
it goes to those sorts of things, the stars may incline us; they do not define us. And same with personality, kind of as you mentioned. I just can't resist giving a little bit of a jab to that.
Yeah. No. It's like, you can't. It's the ENTP nature. You can't help. You can't help. You gotta poke. We
Oh,
poke.
that is such a Pisces thing to say, Nicholas.
I see. Thing to say. Aries, actually.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, my bad.
The best of the zodiac, but yeah, I think oh wait, of course I forgot the important one, biggest one. Important life lesson. I feel like you kind of already have a hint about what it is, but hear from you about what's some very important that you've carried throughout your life, like a piece of advice or something you've heard that had an impact on you.
It can best be summed up of like knowing yourself, and just learning yourself intimately. Um, know who you are, what you stand for, what values, um, that you're not going to give up, regardless of what the systems and authority might tell you. That person, at the end of the day, everything else kind of fades away. Empires rise and fall. Loved ones will, eventually they disappear. They can leave you, or um, but the person that you carry the most with you through this life is yourself. And what you bring to the table. So get to know yourself on that level. Um, don't abandon yourself, because that you are your own sanctuary. You are the person who will know you the best in this life, and who will be with you from beginning to end. It's just you at the end of the day. I mean, yes, the connections we make are so important, but know yourself first and know when um, you need to walk away.
Yeah. You have no other besides yourself, or some kind of statement. I butchered the fuck out of that quote, but there's a quote kind of about that. Someone made, maybe Socrates, also ENTP, by the way, just point it out. But
Interesting.
yeah, there's a reason why I want to put him to death, because he wouldn't shut the fuck up. He's just gonna ask him. Yeah, she's just like, is that really how the
Well,
world works? Is that really supposed to
I'll say this: you better not accept tea at my place at this rate.
The tea is your. Oh, no. Tea. Oh man. But yeah, I think that covers the bulk of it. I want to touch on today, kind of going over like different resources, kind of help rebuild value structure, as well as your own personal experience on what to do when you feel like that your paradigm has kind of shifted beneath you, as well as like taking some valuable pieces from religion, not necessarily having to fall into the dogmatic nature of it, as well as even using fictional characters if you need a place to start to kind of help identify some personality traits that you might associate with. They may actually be able to incorporate into your own value system. But yeah, and an important life lesson to always be yourself. Kind of ended on a corny note. But yes.
No. Not always be yourself, but know yourself.
But yeah, know yourself. Hey, I feel like you can't really be yourself if you don't know yourself. Like, it's implicit in the command.
That is a full other podcast length conversation to go. But,
Open another can of worms. Well, actually, technically speaking, it's not that.
okay.
But
Well,
yeah,
thank you for having me, Nicholas.
what was
It was
that?
a pleasure. Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on and being able to talk about your experiences. Means a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening. Today's fantastic episode. I will have this out at some point in time after I crack down and edit it and listen through it and polish it up and make me look very correct and make her look completely wrong. But yeah, this will come out sometime soon. But thanks again for listening, and as always, keep it real.